got the tap covers on there. We started to put on the front end of the engine here. So we've got this bracket that holds our alternator and our AC compressor. So we put that on, and there's a hidden bolt in behind our pulley here. So you have to remove the pulley to get that bolt in there. They're all 3/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. One up here. And those are all going to be about 30 foot-pounds. And then we have a 1/2 inch here for our dipstick. I just did that one by hand. We've got our tensioner pulley here and our coil, and those are going to be 2 3/8 as well. One there and one underneath the bottom. And then it's got a threaded portion here, and that's going to be for like ground wire. Plan is I'm going to put the AC compressor, I'm going to put that back on, and I need to get this wiring or hoses and stuff kind of out of my way. Once I get that right there, then we can target all of our electrical and stuff like that. On the bench here, what I'm doing is I'm just cleaning up the surfaces for the gasket. And then here's the old bolts here. And originally what they have is these 2 studs, and those are going to be the center ones. So that supports both the gasket and the exhaust manifold while you're assembling it. The problem is that there's no space inside the engine bay. So when you're trying to pull those off, it becomes problematic. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use these studs here just for installation tool. So I'll thread those in there, and then I'll use that to hold the gasket and to line up the exhaust manifold. And then I've made my own bolts over here to install it with. The idea is that the bolts are all the same length, and then we've got lots of meat to get our socket on the end there. Whereas just with the original bolts here, we just got the small head. Sometimes the tools slip off of there. It just can become frustrating to use wrenches and sockets on something with such a small head. Exhaust manifold's installed with new gaskets. That's going to be a 5/16 bolt that goes on there. I made my own. Give me some extra meat so I can grab onto it with some sockets and some wrenches. Both sides got those torqued down, and in the book it's 20 foot-pounds. And as we see in the book here, exhaust manifold bolts 20 foot-pounds. When we get down to where the manifold bolts onto the piping down there, that's going to be a 3/8 bolt, and I do believe that 3/8 should be 30 or 31 foot-pounds. Hooking up some odds and ends here, we have this tube that comes off the water pump to our heater core hose there, and it's got a bolt there, 3/8, and it comes off of here, which is 1/4 inch off the top cover there. So we've hooked that up. I like to double clamp everything nowadays, so I've got both the squeeze clamp on there and the gear clamp. We went in and we've hooked up all of our wiring on this side here, which includes our idle control valve, our throttle position sensor, and this should be our mass air pressure sensor, I do believe. And then we've got all of our injectors here, 1, 3, 5, and 7. We've already hooked up that fuel line previously. We've hooked up this here that goes to our AC compressor. There's another wire that goes in behind there. That wire goes down into our temperature sensor down there, hard to see. We have a ground wire that hooks onto the cylinder head right there. We have another ground wire that goes in behind there, and that does the same thing as on the driver's side, hooks to the cylinder head there. We have this wire here that goes down and underneath, and then it hooks to the bottom of the coil. I've hooked this wire in here, which goes to the AC. We've got our fuel injectors here, 2, 4, 6, and 8. We've hooked up our piping again for the heater core that comes off of this piping here. Again, on this side, we're going to have the squeeze clamp and the gear clamp, double that up. We have our sensor that goes into the manifold. Just hook up this hose here that goes to the bottom. And then in the back, we've installed our distributor. So we've got the distributor cap on, and then I had left all the wires and marked them, so they're routed down in here, and we've got all those plugged in with our fasters that hold the wires there. We've got this side plus the coil. And we've got everything hooked up on this side. We've wrapped it all up here and we've put in our air cleaner assembly and attached all that. There's a hose that comes from over here that attaches onto the throttle body there. We connected our throttle cable. This is going to be our cruise control, and right there's our kickdown cable for the transmission. We ended up putting a new hose on here because the old one was cracked and broken and not pliable anymore. We have our connection right there to the intake manifold that goes to the brake booster. We installed our power steering pump, and what I've done on mine is get the shivs tool line. I have some washers in behind there just to pump this out a little bit and line up these pulleys a little bit. Also, you can see the same thing here with the alternator. You see the little washers that are in there. There's one there, and there's another one down there. We have the alternator on. We put the fan on. Alternator has stuff to hook up in the back here. This block, it'll be 10 millimeter and a 7 millimeter, and then another 10 millimeter for a red cable into the back. We have a ground wire that's going to be a 1/2-inch nut that goes on here. We've connected our hose clamp in there. It's going to be tight, but basically I positioned it so you could get your tools in through here to tighten up that clamp. That's going to be for our upper hose, and it goes on there. And I think that pretty much covers everything. I hope I've got all the little loose connections and odds and ends that needed to be finished there. This is where we put our 3/8 pipe there, and we crack open that valve. We got a towel wrapped around there, so if it burbles over, it's not going to get into the alternator or anything like that. And we just have that crack so that the air can evacuate out of the highest point there. So we're just going to let this thing run and let that air, those air bubbles come out of the top there until it's all out. And then we close the valve, remove our pipe, put the plug in, and everything should be good. Apart from that, everything seems to be running pretty smooth. We don't see any leaks underneath. And once we let this kind of break in for a little bit, then we can put on our bottom skid plate for underneath the radiator. And there's that skid plate there, and all that is, in my case, is going to be 4 5/8 head bolts in the bottom. Here in the back, we don't have any more white smoke. Before we had a little bit of white smoke, not a lot, but enough to be noticeable. That's gone as well. So I do believe that we fixed our problem.